This is awesome.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 257 of Gaming the Industry. We are live now, Shank.
Well,
Are you not
cool,
live?
because no, neither am I recording because there was a Firefox update, which I believe, yeah, I know what happened.
Well, we're live on the MMO channels, so you can just kind of hang out here, guys, until Shank gets his stuff going on his end. If you are looking at the screen, you can tell that we are talking PlayStation 5 today. I mean, if you read the site today, there was like 6 or 7 articles on it already. Plus the 3080 graphics card stuff hit. So we're going to do our show intro because we do have a recorded version once Shank is ready, and then we'll dive into everything. Do you have the chat pulled up, though? So if you guys want to join in the discussion, definitely do that.
Okay, let's try this again. Hope to Christ this works. An unexpected error when trying to connect to the server. Oh, maybe. I'm wondering if the fun.
What you guys are experiencing right now is Shank being put in the tier of nag for the first time.
You gotta love Firefox refreshes. Because I'm pretty sure it just wiped all of the all of the stream key settings and everything.
On Restream?
Yeah, for me at least.
Well, if you want, you can just record the show and we can use the archive, the video archive that I'm streaming right now.
Okay, hold on. I just got the new stream key. Let's see if this works. Nope. Unexpected occur when trying to connect to the server. More information in the log file. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, I've got the stream running on my end, so if you want to just do the audio recording.
Yeah, we're gonna just record it.
So go ahead and do the intro whenever you're ready.
Let me pull up your Twitch. There it is. Okay. Time to record. And welcome, everyone, at last, finally. No idea what was going on there. Apparently, I need to read a log file in OBS. But this is episode 257 of Gaming the Industry. I am Shank, the associate editor for MMORPG.com. I'm not alone, joined by Bradford, who the tables have turned, where he is the one streaming and I am not this week.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, you guys. I'm currently have a mouthful of fried rice. Because it's only 7 o'clock, and I've been working all day and had like 20 minutes to make food before this started. Brian, sorry, I just almost choked on a piece of chicken. Brian is having audio issues, but he'll join us as soon as he gets his audio working. But his Japanese is not improving because he's learning from Shank, who told me to just put, with as much urgency as one can muster, Totaru waru.
Yep. I think I forgot to change that, but that's fine.
Yeah. I also want to remind everybody that Arkham Knight is still broken on PC.
Yeah, man.
I saw that. I saw that game in the PlayStation Plus, the whatever the subscription thing they're doing for PlayStation, in the sizzle reel, and immediately had to tweet that. Because anytime I see Arkham Knight referenced, it's just I have to retweet that.
Yes.
So today is kind of a weird day because we have the RTX 3080 Founders Edition reviews live, and apparently the card is a beast. All I know is it can play Flight Simulator at 41 FPS on 4K Ultra, and considering Flight Simulator is now the new "Can it run Crisis" meme,
Yep.
That's actually kind of really good. Also, if you've been living under a brick today, Sony finally announced the pricing, release date, and pre-order info, and kind of a chuckle with the last one there, for the PS5. It's a total shit show. And if you haven't been following said shit show, we'll kind of keep you abreast of what is going down, yo. So yeah, I guess we can kind of just quickly tackle our gameplay. I haven't played too much this week personally. I played a lot of Crusader Kings and Tony Hawk last week, but I think the last time I really played like a game, other than maybe like one game of Madden, was when we played Elite Dangerous the other night. Which that was actually a lot of fun for me personally. We streamed it on the channel, and my dad joined me. And if you guys have remember the stories that we've told about how we got into PC gaming back in like episode 2 or whatever, my dad is the one who got me into PC gaming by me playing X-Wing versus TIE Fighter with him. And so for me to kind of come full circle and have him join us on the stream playing Elite Dangerous using his flight sticks that we got him for Christmas a few years ago, finally figuring out his PC issues, because he's been having issues with his screen flickering for the last 2 years. And I finally had the genius idea to put the graphics card in the other PCIe slot. I don't know why that wasn't something I thought of years ago, but he finally did it, and lo and behold, it worked. It was a real treat. We actually only streamed for about 2 hours, but we kept playing until like almost midnight. Actually, after midnight, we finally got Shane into the system. We were all in. We figured out the fuel scoop, which actually is really cool. So when you load into a system in Elite, you obviously load in at the sun, and if there's no stations in that system and you have to refuel, you're kind of boned unless you have that fuel scoop. And it's kind of a high wire act where you're trying to maximize the amount of fuel you're getting from the hydrogen corona kind of around the sun, while also not burning up because it is still a sun. And it was really cool figuring that out with him and getting him to Eravate finally. My dad ended up buying his first ship. He bought an Eagle, and I took my Eagle out and got hosed by a master NPC. I was trying to show off, and it did not go well. But yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. I played a little bit of Madden 21 this week as well. I got it on Xbox One X, and it's Madden. There's not much else you can really say. It's really not that great. Just one skirmish, just one exhibition game in that kind of told me everything I needed to know about the this year's version and why it's getting the poor reviews it got. So I'm really looking into trying to get back into Crusader Kings this week, because I've been reading stories about some of the things players are doing. Like one player made it his purpose to eat the Pope.
Wow.
I didn't misspeak. He created a religion and unlocked cannibalism, and he invaded the Papal States, captured the Pope, and then proceeded to cannibalize the Pope.
Nice.
So I mean, that's just it's I love Crusader Kings. What have you been playing this week?
Ghost of Tsushima. I haven't played in the last couple of days, but I basically saved my uncle, you guys. So basically I beat the game.
Yep, that is your Siri moment.
And I'm on to other things. So that's it. I found my uncle apparently. Progressed. Technically, I unlocked the other 2 islands, or at least the northern island directly north of me.
Yeah, you haven't unlocked the third island yet.
But I still have a little bit of unexplored area in my current island, so I'm going to fully explore this before moving on. It was a thing that happened, and I have now completed Ghost of Tsushima. I've completed my objective. That's pretty much it.
Okay then. Well, I'm gonna finish chewing, and then we can kind of jump into it, I guess. I thought you were gonna talk for longer, so I started eating my dinner again.
Nope. That's literally it. I found my uncle, and therefore I have completed the game. I've finished the core objective of the game, and that's pretty much it.
Yep. I mean, I haven't progressed since I found Ciri. I just put down The Witcher 3 and moved on with my life.
There you go.
2 expansions have hit. I think I'm only like a quarter of the way through the actual story. But the core gameplay loop was all about finding Ciri, and I did that.
There you go. So we have completed our respective games, and we can move on to other things.
Well, that's our show tonight, you guys.
Yep.
No, so I guess we can move on to whether or not this is kind of full circle for us, because the next thing on our show notes is ask Brian if Drive Club Online is working yet.
Yep.
And if you remember, Drive Club was a launch title for the PlayStation 4. And today we finally know how much the PlayStation 5 is going to cost people. And Drive Club Online is still not working.
It is definitely broken. Still.
Drive Club VR, it's still a thing, actually, now that I think about it. But I think it's being sunset this year or next year. I don't know. I'll have to look that up, but I don't think anyone's playing it. People who are lucky are definitely going to be playing this, though. Today, the PlayStation 5 was announced to be releasing in the US and some other markets on November 12th. And then the rest of the world, where it's available globally, on November 19th. We know the pricing for the 2 different editions, starting at $399 for the digital edition and $499.99 for the full fat disc edition. The only difference between these 2 editions is the lack of a disc drive. That's it. This isn't like the Xbox Series S and X, where it's an actual hardware difference. This is a PlayStation 5 that just doesn't have a disc drive.
This is technically, it's also a hardware difference. There's no compromise in specs with the PS5 versions.
That's what I mean. So yeah, this is, I mean, they're the same thing, just one has a drive and one doesn't, and it's $100 less. You put out a tweet beforehand, and your pricing was, I mean, last week we also talked about it a little bit. Your pricing was a little off. You thought they were going to go $549 and $499. You didn't think they were going to be as aggressive as they are with the pricing. It sounds like.
Yep. And I'm glad I was wrong. This is so often in this industry I am proven correct, and that's not a good thing. Here, so I genuinely like when I'm proven wrong, and this was a case where I was proven wrong, and that's pretty cool. I don't think either of us actually thought that there was going to be more than a $50 difference between the 2 editions, but there we have it.
I thought the cheapest they were going to go was $449, personally.
Yeah. So we have a console and that $399 that is a magical number, because that's what they've stuck to for an entire generation for PS4 and PS4 Pro. So that price should be very familiar for people who are PlayStation fans or who are just generally just sort of follow the industry. Like that $399 price point is quite important.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see them hit the $399. Basically, what Sony is doing is they are just eating the cost on both of these machines. Because the SSD alone in there, first of all, they've done some seriously custom work on it, and like knowing the price for something comparable on the PC side, like that is probably like a $200 component right there.
Well,
and when you're talking about a
retail, probably not $200 wholesale. And
sure, but I'm talking about like
prices.
I'm talking about the R&D and everything else that's gone into that controller. Like that's not cheap. And like if you're talking about something like that for a $400 machine, Sony is seriously eating the price here, which frankly that's how consoles should work. Like that's what they should be doing. You should sell them at a loss and then make them up with services and other things later. So suffice it to say, I am quite happy with those prices. The digital version is the one I'm definitely going to be going for, because I mean, I just don't buy physical games anymore, and
GameStop thanks you.
Yeah, as they close 100 more stores.
Today was probably a very good day for GameStop. Also it was the beginning of the doom.
Yes, just add it to the dumpster fire that is 2020.
The acceleration. This is the accelerant on their dumpster burning.
Yes.
Now, what I find interesting is that Sony has basically come out and said that the digital edition was going to always have fewer units. They were not going to be making as many of the digital edition, and it makes me wonder if it was just created so they could hit that $400 price point, but their main goal is to sell the full fat version. So it'll be interesting to see what happens once kind of stocks level out and see how available those units will be once the market kind of like levels and the dust settles from the carnage that happened today. But yeah, when I get one, it will be the digital edition, because even though I have bought physical discs for my PlayStation this generation, most of the things I get for console are press codes, and I'm using the word code there specifically. They don't usually send physical discs anymore for reviews. It's 99% of the time going to be a code in your inbox, or if they send you something, it's a box that has a printed out code in it. That's happened to me before too. So I like the price points. I think it's incredibly aggressive. I didn't think they were going to come anywhere near the $299 price point, especially considering the consoles are the same other than the disc drive. This isn't like a situation where you have a I wouldn't say downgrade, but a difference in the spec.
They're not really though. They're really not. They're far more different than they were in the current generation. I mean, there's a whole different the components might be similar, sure, but the way that they're approaching it is.
I was talking about the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition not being.
I thought you were talking about I thought you were talking about the comparing the series, whatever the Xbox is to the. Okay.
I was just saying that I didn't think that the pricing was ever going to get that competitive, because it's not. There's not a technical difference other than a disc drive between the PS5 and the digital edition. Whereas with the Series S and the X, there is an actual difference in the spec. It's a less powerful GPU and a slightly less powerful CPU. I mean, that's obviously going to cut the cost down a little bit. It's interesting. When you look at it, we've got two consoles that cost $499. We've got a console that costs $399, and then a console that costs $299. There's something there for everybody, I think, at every price point, depending on, which console you were going to get, if you were going to get a console day one. You actually have a pretty bold claim here, though, after finally seeing the presentation and seeing the pricing. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts and focus. We sort of started talking about this beforehand, and I don't necessarily agree with you here, but I think it's an interesting take, specifically because you never make broad sweeping statements like this early.
Yeah. So the presentation, first of all, was leagues ahead of anything Microsoft has shown. Let's just get that out of the way first. I loved the fact that in the beginning they showed off Final Fantasy XVI. Yep. And they explicitly stated, hey, this is running on a PC spec'd to a PS5. Clearly a dig at Microsoft. I mean, that's how one could very easily interpret it. But it was very clearly meant to telegraph, hey, what you are seeing is running on a PC spec'd to similar to a PS5. And that type of transparency was provided purely because Microsoft did not provide it at their conferences. That's the only reason that was there. And then everything else we saw a giant disclaimer after Final Fantasy saying, hey, everything you're about to see is on a PlayStation. And what did we see? We actually saw a lot of gameplay, like actual gameplay. Spider-Man looked incredible. There was clearly ray tracing in there, ray tracing reflection specifically. And throughout the entire rest of the conference, there was quite a lot of ray tracing shown. I mean, what we saw were games running on the hardware with the next generation features that both Microsoft and Sony have been touting for the entire year, except Sony's the only one that's actually shown it to us. And that's a fact. What gameplay did we see from Microsoft? Well, we saw Halo. And when I say gameplay, I mean actual gameplay, substantial gameplay. Rather than just 2 or 3 second snippets that you got from the trailerification from Microsoft's showcase. The only gameplay that we received from Microsoft was Halo, and it was announced after the showcase, not during, not before, after the showcase, that it was actually running on a PC. It clearly had no ray tracing in there. It was incredibly, I mean, you saw it. It was incredibly rough. There was pop-in everywhere. It genuinely looked, to me, it looked like one of those videos that you see when a developer is trying to pitch their idea to a publisher, that's how rough it looked to me.
Craig.
Contrast that with Sony. We know Sony makes S tier. I mean, their worldwide studios, their PlayStation Studios first party, are S tier. Look at how they have, and they've earned it. Frankly, this generation specifically, they've earned that position. Look at all of their first parties this year, this generation, and they have been critically received very, very well, and they have sold very, very well. And crucially, they are pretty much all single-player games. They have 0 microtransactions, 0 loot boxes. You contrast this with Microsoft's first party. Honestly, I couldn't even name you 4. That's not even me just being like exaggerating. I literally right now, right at this moment, I can't name you even 4 of their first party games. They have crazy monetization attached to all of them, and they go for more like bombastic multiplayer type style type of games, whereas Sony is very protective of the single player story driven cinematic experiences. Personally, I prefer Sony's take. So when you contrast the showcases, Sony was clearly better. We saw actual gameplay, legitimate gameplay. We saw gameplay featuring next generation technical feature sets. And like I mentioned, have been mentioning for weeks and weeks, Sony has quite a lot of momentum right now. They're exiting the PlayStation 4 generation very strong on the back of their extremely good first-party games. Obviously, extremely strong system sales compared to Microsoft. And quite frankly, they don't need to pivot in the way that Microsoft has had to pivot because they're winning. That's the fact. So when you couple that, realistically, what you end up with is a company that really needs just a single game, just one game to sell the system. That's it, because they've earned it. Like I said last week and pretty much the whole summer, Microsoft does not have a single system seller. They don't have that one first-party game that you can point to and say, that is what I need an Xbox for. Sony is different. Now, it came out later today, actually in this exact article that Bradford is looking at from the PS blog, that actually some of these PlayStation 5 games are going to be coming to PS4. And I'll talk about this later when we actually get into it. But first of all, I hate that. That's like genuinely, truly disappointing. At the same time, just like a Microsoft person or an Xbox fan, if you're one of those evangelists around this product, you're going to want to have that game on the shiniest, newest box, whether it's the Series X or whether it's the PS5. There's always going to be those people. They're going to want to play it on that next generation box. Specifically in the case of Spider-Man, it's going to have ray tracing on the shinier console, and that is a next generation feature, which they showed off in this showcase. So realistically, Sony just needs Spider-Man. The fact that it is a launch day game, the fact that it has ray tracing, the fact that Insomniac has confirmed there's going to be an option to play it at 4K 60 FPS, ray tracing, and then the option to play it at 4K and 60 FPS, those are things you will never find on the PS4 nor the PS4 Pro. Those are experiences that you cannot get on those machines. So I do believe there's going to be a certain segment that's going to be like, actually, you know what? Even though I have a PS4, I'm going to buy the PS5 just so I can play it in this better experience. You couple that with the rest of the showcase, which I think was incredibly strong. I thought Demon's Souls looked incredible. It really, really genuinely looked incredible. Final Fantasy looked really cool, and this is coming from somebody who doesn't play Final Fantasy games. And then we had a couple of other tertiary games, like Bethesda's weird one that's somehow, even though they're a third party, they're only publishing on Sony and PC. I don't get that. But
it's a console exclusive.
Who the hell knows about Bethesda these days? They had some pretty good titles to show off, and then at the end of it, they said, "Okay, here's the price," and $399 is a huge deal for one very, very simple reason. Bradford mentioned this at the top. You can get an Xbox Series X for $500, and it'll do the 4K 60 thing with the ray tracing. while the Series S will give you that ray tracing, and while even though last week we said, yeah, it's a good deal for $299, that hasn't changed. But the fact of the matter is, you pay $100 more and you get a machine that will give you 4K and 60 FPS and the ray tracing. And for, again, those day one buyers, the people that are the quote unquote hardcore console people that genuinely do care about that stuff, I really do think that's going to take some people away from that $299 and be like, you know what, that $399, it's the same price as a PS4, but look at this huge generational leap that I'm getting in performance and graphics. I'm going to go with the $399 version because it's only $400.
But Shank, the human eye can't see over 24 FPS.
Yeah, to try to argue that with a console fanboy, they're gonna disagree with you when it comes to buying next generation machines. But everything else will be like, nope, can't see past it.
It's hilarious though, considering that was the argument at the beginning of this generation.
Yeah, it's gonna be made again. I just think I'm seeing a repeat of last generation. I really am. And it's purely because Microsoft simply doesn't have anything. You could not say that last generation. Last generation, Microsoft had first-party games on day one. They really did. They had the shitty zombie game Dead Rising. Dead Rising? Dead Rising.
Yeah, Dead Rising 3.
They had a Forza game.
Rise, Son of Rome.
They had Rise, Son of Rome, which was their graphical showcase. Mm-hmm. They had Killer Instinct, I think, also launched.
Yeah, KI launched at day one.
So, I mean, Xbox had first parties last time. Where they failed was in their pricing and their messaging and their whole business policies. This time what they have done is they have shored up the pricing.
Yeah,
I think that's
completely inverse.
It's the total inverse, right? Yeah. They've shored up the pricing. They have, from a consumer service policy standpoint, it's actually on the surface pretty good. But they have no games. They have 0 games to sell that machine. Sony has consistently been, actually that's the word I'm thinking of for Sony. Sony has been consistent for the last 7 years. They have been very, very consistent. And again, this $399, this is consistency. This is a safe price. And by safe, I mean not safe for Sony, safe for the consumer. People are familiar with this $399. They're used to seeing $399 and PlayStation associated. You couple that with the strong showcase today, Spider-Man, which is coming off the back of Spider-Man 2018, which was fantastic, running on a next generation machine. You had the tease for God of War Ragnarok, which is going to be nuts. Horizon Zero Dawn on a next generation. I mean, Sony just has it. I am seeing a total repeat of last generation. I'm ranting here, but there's a lot of thoughts I had.
Yeah.
One last thing before I kind of give up the floor here. There's a oh man, what was I gonna say? Now I'm kind of lost. Damn it! I had something. Damn it! Okay, you start talking. I
don't think I necessarily disagree with anything in theory, but I think and this is kind of what I'm seeing on Twitter as well, for a lot of people who normally would be day one purchasers, the minute the news came out that Miles Morales, Demon Souls, I think probably not Demon Souls, but Horizon Forbidden West, whatnot, will be on PlayStation 4. A lot of people that I know that were going to be day one purchases are not going to be, and it's not that they don't want those extra shiny features, but it's just the nature of the economy right now. $400 at least for a console that will run a game that they can play on a console they already own right now isn't a purchase decision that they're willing to make. I think it was a lot different when you could only get some of these experiences on the next gen hardware, and that was one of the major differentiators that we had between Microsoft's policy and their angle and their approach to this upcoming generation versus Sony. Microsoft was very much embracing the we don't want to leave anyone behind, versus Sony, who was like, look, we believe in generations. And I think Sony is kind of reading the room a little bit, realizing that consumers actually want the blurring of some generations, at least at the beginning, because it's a lot of money. $400 is still a lot of money. And in a pandemic year where a lot of people have been out of work for 6-7 months, some cities are still just kind of struggling. My city is still not fully where it should be. We still have casinos that are shut down. I think Sony made the right business decision here, but maybe not necessarily the best decision for the industry moving forward. But I think at the same time, it turned a lot of people from day one purchasers to someone who is going to just wait until there are more games, more reasons to purchase this console versus something they can currently play on their current gen. I don't disagree that there aren't going to be people out there who run out and get it because they want to take advantage of those features. Those people are probably always going to buy one. So I don't really count them. I'm thinking of the people who aren't necessarily always going to be day one purchasers of these consoles. Were planning on it, and then once this news came out, have kind of decided not to. I've seen it happen on Twitter today. I've seen it happen in my own personal texts between friends who aren't as into the gaming industry as the rest of us. And I think it does affect things. I think one of the other major issues, though, is this whole pre-order debacle that's happened today. That is definitely going to put off a lot of potential purchasers. When you say that pre-order is going to start tomorrow, first of all, you don't even say it in your showcase. And while you aren't wrong, I think this showcase was probably the best showcase that we've seen out of either company this entire time, because we saw gameplay, we saw new titles that we didn't really know about. I mean, we had rumors that Final Fantasy XVI was going to be talked about today. I didn't expect to see them lead off, and I didn't expect a 4-minute cinematic / gameplay trailer. While the gameplay looked very early, it was still surprising to see that. I wasn't expecting Hogwarts Legacy. Whatever your thoughts about J.K. Rowling right now are, Harry Potter's still a huge brand, and it's going to sell, and people are going to dive into it regardless of whether you think she's transphobic.
I know is going to buy that game.
Yeah, whether you think she's transphobic or not, you're going to buy Hogwarts Legacy. An open world Harry Potter game. I mean, we've all kind of dreamed of that since we first started reading the books. They had a lot of great showings. The problem is a lot of vital information that consumers needed, like pre-order dates, like where you can buy it at, what games you were going to play at launch. I put out a tweet the second the show ended and was like, okay, other than Fortnite, what are you playing at launch? Because we did not know the launch titles after the showcase, from the showcase. Spider-Man's trailer still said holiday 2020. We had no date on Demon's Souls. We had no information. Godfall wasn't even there. Godfall was a no-show. We had incorrect information being given to people in the show, which we'll talk about in a minute as well. The whole thing just felt rushed to me. The whole thing felt as though it was cobbled together at the last minute because Microsoft kind of pushed them to have to release this now. It makes me wonder whether or not this date was always the date, or whether or not the news that happened last week forced PlayStation's hand. And a lot of the information we were getting out after the fact, in terms of pre-orders, in terms of pricing on accessories, in terms of what games you'll play at launch that are not third-party games we already knew about. We obviously knew about Call of Duty, we knew about Valhalla and stuff, but we didn't know Miles Morales, we didn't know Demon's Souls. All of that was kind of put out in this blog or Jeff Keighley's Twitter account. And even then, that information wasn't 100% correct. So I think while the show itself was good, the lingering effect for me isn't the show anymore. It's how this entire thing took shape today and kind of the end results here. You were very lucky if you were able to get one of these consoles, because Sony was saying that pre-orders weren't going to start till tomorrow, and retailers took that as like their Baby Yoda moment to like push the red button in the cockpit at that exact moment. And a lot of retailers are sold out now. A lot of retailers, their sites just didn't work for a while, and that's normal for launch days. That happened back in 2013 as well. That happened to a degree when even the PlayStation Pro and the Xbox One X's were released. But it just feels rushed and cobbled together. It doesn't feel cohesive. When vital information that should have been in your show is only being announced via Jeff Keighley's Twitter account, there's a problem for me. And I think that too will put off not necessarily the hardcore. I don't think the hardcore is swayed either way. If you're going to buy an Xbox, you were always going to buy an Xbox. If you're buying a PlayStation, to those consumers, the name on the console matters more than anything else here. You're always going to have those fanboys that just don't look at this objectively and only care about, what company, what color they're bleeding, whether it's blue or green. But you do have plenty of people who are on the fence as to which one to buy. And after the issues they're having today, I've heard more people tell me that they're looking at Microsoft now because they have in their minds, they think they're going to have a better chance of getting one. That's not to say that Microsoft's launch on the pre-order, launch on the 22nd isn't going to be a shit show too. It definitely could still be. But it just feels more put together. That's partly why I don't think it's game over. I still think a lot of people don't care about 4K. I don't know anybody besides people on this call who have a 4K TV in real life, besides my parents. And even then, they watch 1080p stuff. They don't even have 4K set up correctly. I know a lot of people who think that a 1440p machine makes more sense to them than a 4K machine because they don't have a 4K TV to take advantage of it. I still think that is very compelling. And we're not saying that isn't a good deal. Shank even said that as well. But I think that because that is still an option for a lot of people out there, it's not game over. I still think it's far from that. I think the fact that there aren't any games to play on the Xbox, there aren't any compelling reasons to buy an Xbox for the games, is more game over than anything else.
Yeah, and that's now that I remembered what I'm saying. That's why I think it's game over, is because Microsoft very clearly has this vision for the future, right? I mean, they have said that they see Amazon and Google as their competitors more so than Sony and Nintendo. Now, that's great. They might think that, but the fact of the matter is consumers aren't there yet. They don't think that way. And that's not going to be the case on the consumer side for at least 2 or 3 years, at least, right? Consumers, what they care about is, what can I play on this box? They don't care about, we have this grand vision for connecting all these services that's going to connect all of these different disparate platforms and you can play anywhere you want. Like, they don't care. They want to know what they can play on their box. And that's short-term wins. And for a console launch, short-term wins matter. If it didn't matter, Microsoft wouldn't be this far behind coming out of this generation. But the fact of the matter is, short-term wins, that initial launch period is really, really important. Microsoft never recovered from their stumbles out of the gate this current generation. And look where we are today, right? Yeah. So yeah, Microsoft might have this grand vision, but the reason I think is game over is because their vision, they can communicate it how frequently as they want. I'm not even saying they've communicated it necessarily badly. I'm just saying that what their vision is simply doesn't line up with consumer expectation in the here and now today. Yeah. People want games, and Sony showed them games. In no uncertain terms did we see games. We saw gameplay, then we saw the $399 price. And that, to me, when you couple that all together, it's less about the price and more about the price plus all of these things and the games and all of these other features. That's why I think Microsoft is just dooming themselves out of the gate. I really just that's the repeat of last gen I'm seeing. It's not for the same reasons as last time, but the end result I personally think is going to be the same. I could be wrong.
Yeah, we're very much armchair, economist right now. I would say, yeah, whatever. I would say the huge difference here is that this is a very different Microsoft than what Don Matrick's Microsoft was. Don Matrick had this vision that if you wanted to not have a connected console, Xbox 360 existed, whereas Phil Spencer's like, if you want to play your Xbox on your phone, here, fucking play it on your phone. So I think Microsoft is just looking at this incredibly differently, whereas we're still looking at this from the very traditional console launch viewpoint, and maybe it's just the way it is. Microsoft is playing a different game, but unfortunately, when you're selling someone a $500 box, Valhalla, a game that I could play on either one of these consoles plus a PC, isn't going to be a selling point. I think people are going to buy an Xbox because they were always going to buy an Xbox, but I think a lot more people are going to buy a PlayStation because you know, there are games to play that are only going to be on PlayStation, which we found out, confusingly enough, that there were some games that were announced for PC today that apparently weren't supposed to be announced for PC today, or aren't actually coming to PC. This is why I think this entire thing was just kind of thrown together at the last minute. You had games that have been touted as PlayStation exclusives since we first started seeing PlayStation exclusives, like Godfall, which was the very first PlayStation exclusive we saw at the Game Awards last year, completely absent from this. And yet you had both Final Fantasy XVI, and the amount of times I accidentally wrote Final Fantasy XIV today when writing up these articles is laughable. It's good because you just switch around the V and the I on that number, and you've got the MMO or you've got the game that isn't out yet. So yeah, the amount of times, you had both Final Fantasy XVI and Demon Souls today announce that they were coming to PC, and so naturally I wrote up articles about those because first and foremost, we are a PC site. I mean, vast majority of MMOs, RPGs come out on PC. We're writing a lot more console news, because more MMOs are coming out in consoles nowadays as well. And B, we're writing more industry news because for us, we think that the entire industry should be covered, especially considering so many things that may not seem related to the MMO market will eventually affect the MMO market and vice versa. So we like to write about all this stuff. But if you watched the showcase today, you saw that at the end of the Final Fantasy XVI trailer, which we knew was running on a PC, like Shank said, because they said it up front. I don't think it was to bash Microsoft. I think it was just because people expect transparency. But, whatever you want to think is fine.
Opportunistic things.
Yeah, I think there was less. I think there was less overt malice into this versus like, this is how you can trade your games to your friends.
Yeah.
The whole reason why that showcase was delayed 45 minutes is so Shu and Adam Boyce could stand in a room at the LA Convention Center and hand each other a disc and they could record it.
It was literally like in some backstage. I don't even know what the hell it was.
Dude, that showcase was at the LA Coliseum. Not the Coliseum. It was some room downtown LA near USC. And that video was taken from like the bowels, like one of those staging rooms that lead you to the stage, backstage. That's where that video was taken from. Yeah, anyways, at the end of the trailer, you saw in fine print, and that was my takeaway from this entire thing, other than I felt like this was completely cobbled together and not put together well, was, in my mind, the subtitle of this showcase was also coming to PC in fine print. Because the two of the biggest games announced, Final Fantasy XVI and Demon Souls, both said that. So naturally, we wrote the articles. I wrote the articles. 16 looks cool. We know nothing about it. I get a ton of Ivalice vibes, which if you've played Final Fantasy at all in your life, you might know what Ivalice is. Ivalice is one of the most underused worlds in Final Fantasy history. Final Fantasy Tactics takes place there, and that's one of my favorite Final Fantasy games of all time. So I'm really hoping that it takes place there. The whole crystal aspect they're talking about, the legacy of the crystals, has shaped our history for long enough. I was getting some Crystal Chronicles vibes, so who the hell knows what's going to happen. It was also rather interesting to see Ifrit just take no shit anymore and start ripping someone apart. Usually you don't see summons in Final Fantasy get that violent. And then
Forest.
Okay, that's Magic the Gathering. And then we saw the Demon Souls remake, which, as someone who doesn't like Souls-likes, I still have not beaten the first boss in Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3.
Brian just played a different game, actually.
Yeah, Brian just played a totally different version of Bloodborne. In fine print, it said not. This one is more interesting because it said it was a timed console exclusive, and it was also coming to PC. And Sony has retracted that. They reached out to Kotaku, which we reported on, claiming that the Demon Souls trailer coming to PC as well as other consoles was a human error. Normally you have people looking at these trailers before you throw them in front of millions and millions of faces. Square Enix did something weird where they reached out to IGN and asked IGN to remove all mentions of Final Fantasy XVI on PC, effectively retracting the announcement that it was coming to PC. But when they were pressed about whether or not it truly was, their statement was, "We have no further information on if Final Fantasy XVI will be released on platforms other than the PS5." So it's one of those where maybe it's coming, maybe it's not. This kind of gives me vibes of Final Fantasy VII Remake back in 2015 when it was announced it was shown off was revealed, I guess is the better phrase there, at the Sony press conference. And everyone was saying it was a Sony exclusive, and then word came out that it was coming to Xbox One, and then Square Enix retracted that. So a lot of vibes from that. It's just confusing. And then you top it all off with what we've already talked about, this whole pre-order debacle. There was no information as to when you can pre-order this game. And I think that's one of the major reasons why I don't feel like Microsoft is going to lose too much here. Because they were very clear and we've talked about Microsoft's messaging and marketing and how confusing and out of sync it seems. I don't think it's been that out of sync. You have a different viewpoint. That's one reason why the show's interesting.
It's not just me. It's like my friends have reached out to me and be like, yeah, no, like I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Naming conventions aside, I think the naming conventions with the Series S and X is completely just stupid, and they need to fire that person and never let them work in a marketing team again.
And Greenberg.
They were crystal clear as to when you could get your hands on and when you could pay for their console. They gave you a 2-week window to prepare. I mean, that was the most clear their messaging has been this entire time. And I honestly feel it's one of the most important things you need to kind of be clear on. It's the thing I've been harping on these companies for not being more clear on for most of this year. And for that information to be completely missing from Sony's press conference, and then to have it come out, like when PlayStation tweeted saying we'll see you in November, they didn't even tweet about pre-order information. It was Jeff Keighley who ended up tweeting, which prompted a tweet from Sony. I mean, the whole thing like I said, it just feels cobbled together and rushed. It's weird. It's really weird. And then to top it all off, they say the pre-order is going to start tomorrow, and then you have 4 of the 5 major retailers go live today. I mean, if I was a parent who had to work all day and couldn't, I am a parent who had to work all day, but very different circumstances from someone who had to go to an office, came home, was looking to get one of these for their son, saw that pre-order is going to start tomorrow, and then saw after the fact that, oh, actually they started today and you can't get one now, I would be pissed. I'd be absolutely pissed.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a shit. I mean, we've used the phrase shit show, and I think that's the best way. I mean, it was literally, it was as if someone took a bag of shit, lit it on fire, and threw it in a dumpster. It's a shit show coupled with a dumpster fire. I mean, today started really great for Sony. Final Fantasy XIV. That's a huge game, whether it's going to come to PC or not. Final Fantasy basically living on PlayStation again is rather huge. Then you had Hogwarts, which again, whether you think she's transphobic or not, you're going to play that game. You had Demon Souls. I mean, you had a lot of great bangers. And then the lingering taste in my mouth isn't how great those things looked and how much, I hate using this phrase, but how hype I was as just a pure fan of these games and in this industry. It's how Sony's incredibly diverse and usually very good PR wing completely botched how you can actually get your hands on this console.
Yeah, it's so bad. I mean, it's just incompetence. Honestly, that's really what it is. That there's no getting around it. It's just incompetence. I agree with everything that Bradford said regarding just the irresponsible nature of the whole sort of post-announcement debacle, which is still raging. We touched upon previously, briefly, this whole Sony's, how they're gonna have SpiderMan and Horizon releasing on the PS4 as well, and I believe there's like a few more games, but those are the 2 big ticket items. I can't express just how utterly disappointed I am in that decision. I think, I mean, I have been critical of Microsoft's kumbaya, let's all move into this together, unrealistic notion of like, hey, we can all like experience this whole next generation, and that's not really how technology works. You have to, I mean, there was at some point, there was, I believe it was right after that showcase, there was either a 343 rep or a Microsoft rep saying like, listen, the Xbox Series X version of Halo Infinite's not going to be compromised, and it just was what we saw. It just was. So I have been very critical of Microsoft's attitude of, at least for the first 2 years, that they were going to have all of the first party games released across generation. Now, who knows if that's true or not, because again, Microsoft's messaging has been clear as mud on that with respect to some games. So I thought, okay, cool. Sony, you guys believe in generations, as you have it self-admittedly, expressed. And then we find out that these games are going to actually be coming on the previous generation. I hate that. I don't for a second buy into this whole kumbaya, we're all in this together thing at all. That's not how you get progress when it comes to clear generational leaps. I mean, you have to leave things behind if you want to get experiences that you could never get before. And I guarantee you, no matter what they say regarding Spider-Man and Horizon Zero Forbidden West, saying, no, just because it's on PS4, you're still going to get a next-gen experience. Sure, we might get ray tracing and stuff in them, but it's still going to be inherently limited. That is just a fact. And if you need proof of this, look at any of the games on PC that also have ray tracing. They are nothing more than console ports with ray tracing. That's a fact. It doesn't matter how incredible you think Control is as a technical achievement, and it is a technical achievement, but at the end of the day, it is a console game with ray tracing. That's it. If you want that true generational leap, you have to go to Flight Simulator. Flight Simulator is a generational leap. It is something that you cannot run in its current iteration. I have a huge doubt that game could run anywhere near respectively on a console. I just don't think it could. That game is a generational leap. It is doing things that have never really been done before. And they did it by just pushing the current hardware to the max. I want that in the consoles. It can be done. It genuinely can be done. I mean, look at a game like Rise. That was not possible on the 360 and the PS3 generation. It just wasn't. You need to have these games that clearly show off this generational leap, and I'm so disappointed that Sony has made that decision to walk back their stance and say, yeah, cool, PS4 owners can also play this. There might be some economic reasons to do with that, but I just don't care. And I say this knowing how arrogant and privileged that sounds, but frankly, I care more about the technology and the progress than I do anything else. And I just don't care if a PlayStation 4 person can't play that game. Like, you have, at a certain point, you need better hardware to get a better experience, a generationally better experience. I hope that this sort of policy doesn't extend to too many other games. I really hope God of War does not have that same quote-unquote mandate, for lack of a better word. I'll say policy, it's probably a better word. I really hope God of War Ragnarok does not follow the same path. I want that to be a pure PlayStation 5, no PlayStation 4, nothing. Just focus on the PS5, keep it on that system, push the technology forward, show us what you can do when you don't have to develop for the lowest common denominator from the Sony family. Yeah, that's my thing, and it's disappointing. It's really disappointing. Did we let's see, where's the, I can't remember if I gave you Jeff Keighley's tweet.
Yeah, I've got it. I mean, again,
okay.
I retweeted it earlier, so I mean, I
had
the tweet already.
I just love this when they're like, they literally said, we will give players plenty of advance notice, and then
didn't.
you have to love just the idiocy and competence of this industry. You really, really do. Basically, what we're trying to say at the end of the day here is, get a 3080.
I mean, yeah. I mean, everything today didn't convince me of a day one purchase of any of these consoles, man. I uh, I knew I was gonna get one just purely because of work. This is my job. I I need I need at least one in case an MMO or something hits one of those consoles, and we need to cover it. I mean, that's just the nature of this beast. But if I weren't a journalist in this industry, I don't think I'd be buying one right away, um, because the 3070 exists in theory if the numbers hold up with Nvidia's claims. But even then, the 3080 exists, which we know a lot more about today because those reviews hit today. Um, I haven't had the time to go through a lot of these just yet. I watched Linus's video earlier. I can never get through any of Steve's deep dives. I appreciate what they do, but even as someone who has reviewed these, I review these cards from a much more mainstream perspective because I feel as though I'm a much more mainstream person when it comes to this thing. I cannot get through a full technical deep dive that they do in one sitting. I have to break it up because it's just too much and sensory overload for me. But I feel as though they do like the most in-depth, comprehensive GPU reviews on the market out of anybody. I'm sure you've kind of gone through everything.
Oh yeah, I've read as many as I could. I've watched as many as I could. I love Steve's mind works a lot like mine, and that's probably why I like their stuff, is because he thinks a lot like I do. And not in like he agrees with me, but just the way that he thinks is similar to the way that I think, with how he breaks things apart and figures out, how the bigger pictures and everything. I like it. I like his analysis. So this is this is a card which has been pretty much been rumored for a long time. We had the presentation a couple of weeks ago. It is going to be available on the 17th. So we record this on Wednesday. This is the 16th when we're recording this. So by the time you hear this, it's probably already for sale. The embargo
it's been for sale today. Newegg's already sold out.
Newegg's already sold out, apparently. Okay. The Founders Edition, the embargo for the Founders Edition broke today. So we got quite a lot of information. So Steve did a excellent breakdown of the mounting pressure, so you could really see like how good is their cooling solution. And earlier this evening, they completely tore down the card, so you could see the PCB and everything, and how like beefy the cooling solution actually is. They looked at thermal responses. They looked at obviously the frame rates and the performances of a lot of these titles. Basically, this game is meant for 4K, and this is where I'm going to get ranty and preachy. Like, if you buy this card and play it at 1080p, you don't deserve this card. Like, you are wasting this card. And in fact, other reviewers have proven that if you play this game, use this card at 1080p, you are actually getting worse performance than less powerful cards, and it's because you're running into a bottleneck. So don't be one of those morons who buys a high-end 4K card and sticks to 1080p. Like, you just bought a card that somebody else could have had that would have actually used it for its purpose. So just don't do that. However, at 4K, this card is quite beastly. With respect to the leap over the 2080, which is the card that Nvidia was comparing it against, which makes the most sense, frankly, because it's an 80 series card. Therefore, you compare it to the previous 80 series. And Steve also, they compared it to other cards like the 2080 Ti, the Radeon 7, which I didn't even know he still had, but that was surprising. And the 5700 XT, which is what made the Radeon 7 obsolete. But basically, the reviews across the industry and across the board included the Radeon's 5700 XT because at the time of review, that's the only thing AMD has in terms of the high end, and it's not even high end; it's really mid range. I think it just goes to show you how that there AMD has nothing in the high end or the enthusiast end. That's what it is. But compared to the 2080, the 3080 performed extremely well in pretty much every instance. Specifically, when you're talking about things like ray tracing, the ray tracing performance of the 3080 compared to the 2080 is pretty significant. When you add in DLSS, it kind of goes further. The gap squeezes a little bit when you're talking about 1440p. So again, this is really meant for a 4K performance card. Interestingly, the cooler performance of this was noted to be actually quite good, which is it's something that's I'm glad to see that, because the Founders Edition from the Touring series, the 20 series, was just not. It kept in a lot of heat. So from a noise level and from a heat dissipation standpoint, the cooler on the 3080 actually did perform pretty well. There was also some information regarding different APIs, so Vulkan versus DX12, and basically this card seems to like Vulkan a lot more than DX12, and we actually saw, for example, Steve saw in Red Dead Redemption 2, he saw a 10% improvement while using Vulkan instead of DX12. That's not insignificant. That's actually pretty good. So overall, this card is, if you're looking for something that's 4K, that's going to allow you to max out pretty much every game except for Flight Sim and get your 4K 60 FPS performance, this is the card. I mean, there's really nothing as of right now. There's nothing else like this. When you're talking about value, and I think this is why there's people look at Touring as a disappointment, was that the 20 series Touring was really what they were trying to do was change the paradigm with respect to graphics rendering. And they did this by introducing ray tracing. Now, as a Generation 1, this ray tracing, just like any Gen 1 technology, it's going to be slow to adopt. People are going to doubt every single step that you do. And people did. And then all of a sudden in 2020, lo and behold, NVIDIA's investments and gamble paid off, because DLSS became huge. Ray tracing became huge again. And I'm going to say this constantly, there's no greater proof of ray tracing's adoption into the mainstream than these consoles having that technology in them. Consoles are about as mainstream as you can get. The fact that they have ray tracing in them shows you that, yeah, this is actually a big deal. Not only that, we're seeing massive games, Cyberpunk, Watch Dogs, Call of Duty, Fortnite, Minecraft. All of these games have ray tracing or will be receiving ray tracing at launch. So the proliferation of this technology is huge. As such, the pricing for Touring was quite high. Bradford, you have a 2080, and pretty much every single benchmark out there says that the 2080, from a rasterization standpoint, is basically a 1080 Ti, except it was priced at $700, right? And cool, it had the ray tracing, but at the time, it was, people asked, like, okay, this is the same rasterization performance because there's no ray tracing titles. So if you wanted that extra performance, you really had to pay $1,200 to get the 2080 Ti. So the value right there wasn't justified for probably like 95% of people. This time, though, this card not only outperforms the 2080, it healthily outperforms the 2080 Ti from anywhere from like 15 to 25 to 30%. So a $700 card performs far better than measurably better than a $1,200 card in rasterization, ray tracing, and DLSS. I think that's where that value is coming from, especially when we move down the stack to the $500 3070, which has not released yet. We have no idea the actual real world performance, but I think this is going to be a much better pill to swallow for most people, especially if you're stuck on Pascal, the 10 series. to say, okay, you know what, maybe it is actually time for me to update because I can justify it now with the price and the performance uplift that I'm receiving.
Mm-hmm.
On the extreme end, you have the 3090, which is going to be $1,500 releasing in a week. And as is the case with as you go higher and higher in the pricing structure, you get diminishing returns with respect to performance. Personally, I don't care because it's going to objectively be the best out there, and I want that. That being said, I will always tell people, don't do what I do, because what I do does not represent the majority of people and their needs. I mean, if you feel like if you just want that power, okay, cool, spend the $1,500. But I think for most people, if they want it, especially this is an enthusiast, we're getting into the price range for this $800, where people, when they spend $800, they really want a specific experience, right? They really want that high frame rate, high resolution, all of the bells and whistles with the graphics. They really do want that.
Mm-hmm.
So bang for buck here isn't as important as when you move like to the $500, but still the fact remains that for $700, you really are getting something that is a substantial leap over last generation's flagship for $500 less in price. And it's just overall better. So that's 3080. I think this is the card that you're looking at, right?
Yeah, though, I mean, it'll be a while before I even can buy one, so I'll be on the 2080 for quite a bit longer. But I can't justify spending an entire month's worth of rent on a graphics card. And as much as I want 2080 Ti performance, I don't mind spending a little extra and getting better than 2080 Ti performance and then some, So, yep, this is kind of what I'm looking at. So it's cool to see that these benchmarks, well, they are what they are. And what makes me excited is that number in Flight Sim is if you're pushing it to its max, it means it's got room to scale in my mind. So that 41 FPS,
it's one of those.
It could easily become 60, turning some stuff down.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about that's what I love about Flight Sim is that it's building in that scalability so that it's one of those games where you can't just there's only so much you can tinker with. You just need to have that brute force to get all of the bells and whistles and 60 FPS and 4K. Like that's just one of those classic. It's a PC games of old where you just need brute force.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what I love about that game. But we're gonna have the 3090 releasing in about a week, so we will see from various people, what the uplift is over the 3080. Again, I strongly suspect for most people, and by most people I mean like the vast majority of people, like 95% of people, the 3080 is going to be plenty. Like if you're looking for that upgrade, that true generational upgrade, this card is going to be plenty. And here's the thing, if you buy the 3080, you have something that handily outperforms these next gen consoles for the duration of their lifetime. Realistically, you literally will not have to upgrade this card for the next 7-8 years, and you will have a PC before the consoles have even launched. You will have a PC that is simply more powerful by a significant margin than either of these two machines. And if you want, you can sit on that PC and be happy with it, right? Like you don't have to upgrade. You'll be fine with it. I think that's also something that people should consider because it is worth considering and it is substantial. One final thing, I think if you have a 2080 Ti, like that card is all of a sudden it's not going to become useless. Like it's still a really powerful card. It just because these cards are releasing doesn't mean it's all of a sudden less powerful. That's not how technology works. If you have that card and you like it and you don't want to upgrade, don't upgrade. You're fine. Keep it, right? Like you don't have to. No one's making you upgrade. You can hold on to it as long as you want. But I would urge people not to fall into this trap of like, oh man, I have a 2080 Ti. Like it's crap now. It's just not. It's a really good card. It's right now it's the second best card out there you can get. And it's not even close, right? Like there's There's nothing even close to the 2080 Ti below it. So, yeah, I mean, but if you are one of those people who bought a 2080 Ti in the last couple of months, like that's on you. You should have listened to everybody telling you don't buy it. There's new cards around the corner. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. So yeah, if you're one of those people, that's just your fault. You that's I'm gonna blame you. Anyway, that's the 3080, you guys. 3090 is releasing next week. It should be fun. Bradford's buying me one.
I'm not, because I am not rich. Okay, well, I think we can kind of close out then. We had some rather cool topics to talk about. It's always cool to one like new tech. I mean, this is an exciting time whether you are buying one of these things or not, because it's basically gamer Christmas right now. So yeah, we're working on how to reach these keys. Shank, you have anything? I don't think you have anything you're working on.
You pronounced all of those E's. No, I'm currently not working on anything per se, though I do have some ideas for future content stuff for the site in general that I'm brainstorming.
Cool.
So, yeah.
I wrote an article earlier this week about the Lotro mini expansion pricing, and yes, before you say it, I understand I don't have to buy the $100 version. I feel like that's a given. Like I shouldn't have to explain that in the article. It still doesn't mean that announcing a $100 version weeks after you had some of the worst server downtime in the game's history was a smart move. But go read that. It's called Lotro's mini expansion pricing feels tone deaf. Tone deaf to me. I think it's just them not reading the room. Some people in the comments have pointed out that it just seems like they don't care. Not necessarily tone deaf, just willfully ignorant or willfully disregarding the concerns of their fans, because they know that there are going to be whales out there who will spend $100 on it anyways. Yeah, so go read that. We've had a couple really cool articles hit this week. We had one hit today that I'm actually a little upset that isn't getting more comments on it. And it's about how role players helped reform Azeroth in World of Warcraft. We kind of looked at 3 examples of how the role-playing community on Worm's Rest and Worm Rest Accord and Moonguard, which I play on Moonguard, just FYI, kind of helped shape the story of WoW, using examples like the Jeddine tournament or Her Tallness. The other one is Cask and Anvil, which is a dwarven community. So go check that out. If you like seeing how players affect games, you don't necessarily think of players really affecting change in a game like World of Warcraft. It's not really billed as a sandbox, but it is a game and a community that the creators of it, whatever you think of Blizzard and their business practices, they do listen to their community when it comes to the way that they implement things in games. And having role players help shape Azeroth itself officially, not just within their own community, but having it become official canon is pretty cool. We also had a piece hit about the 3 MMOs that tried and failed to do Destiny before Destiny. That hit today. It's getting some good play. It's a pretty cool idea that Josh came up with. Last week we have a lot of cool articles that have been hitting the site. I feel like we've really kind of hit our stride as an editorial team, and the way our writers are approaching the content now. We have some pretty cool things coming down the pipeline too, so stay tuned for that. I don't have anything I'm working on per se. Actually, I do, but it's embargoed, so I can't talk about it. But you'll see that next week. So you can follow the show at GTI Podcast. You can follow the site at MMORPG.com on Twitter. You can follow Brian at SilentFury007. Ask him when he's going to rewire his PC and figure out if he's going to live stream it.
Pray for Brian, you guys.
Pray for him, you guys. You can follow myself at LOTLR. You can follow Shank at Shank the Tank.
Yes, you can visit us at mmorpg.com for all the articles and stuff that Bradford just talked about. Of course, you can go to gamingtheindustry.com if you want an RSS feed of this show. We are live every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We broadcast to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and wherever you want to find your podcasts, most likely. Join us every Wednesday for new episodes. I generally stream to my Twitch, Periscope, and YouTube. This is Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern. Shows will be up on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/shank, TH-tank. Go to the Gaming the Industry playlist. And the video on demand versions of these shows should be there for you to listen to. That should be it for the show tonight. Let's go ahead and say our goodbyes.
Peace out, y'all.
Peace out. If you manage to get a PS5, good luck. And if not, well,
maybe sacrifice a goat next time.
Buy a 3080, you guys.